Welcome back to the channel and thank you for watching, and thank you for subscribing if you aren't already subscribed, by the way. So many of you will know that actor Kevin Spacey appeared in a magistrates court in the United Kingdom just recently, facing 2 charges which he strenuously denies. Many of you, particularly my international viewers, might wonder what this means to appear in a magistrates court, what happens next, what happened at this first hearing, and how it all generally works in the United Kingdom when facing such charges. So I thought this video might be a useful short explainer for you, and for any of the law students that are watching, because I know some of you watch, this might be a brief recap on what happens in criminal cases. So first of all, the generics. In the United Kingdom, for a summary-only offence, there is a short time limit of 6 months within which the prosecution must lay the information, which means present the information to a magistrate's court to begin a criminal prosecution. For indictable, which is the more serious one, indictable-only cases, there is no time limit whatsoever, and there are 2 separate courts, which I'll explain in a moment. There's one case in between, which is an either way offence, which means either it could be tried in the Magistrates Court, which is the lower criminal court, or it could be tried at the Crown Court, which is the more serious criminal court. Now, if an offence is either way, it will, of course, start in the Magistrates Court, which again I'll explain in a moment, but it may be sent to the Crown Court if the court and the judge felt that it was serious enough that it can only be tried in a Crown Court. The main reason for this is that the Crown Court has more serious sentencing powers. In other words, they can send to prison for much longer periods of time. Now, all cases in the United Kingdom will start their life in the Magistrates Court, and depending on the case and whether the Magistrates Court is going to hear and try the case, a plea may or may not be entered formally at that hearing. So that's when I'll come to what Kevin Spacey is charged with and explain that in light of the United Kingdom procedures, pleas, and so on. So in this case, there are 2 charges against Kevin Spacey, which he strenuously denies. One of sexual assault on a man in 2013, and a second one that he caused a man to engage in penetrative activities against his consent some years earlier in 2008. Now, the first of those is an either way offence, meaning it could be tried in the Magistrates Court or it could be tried on indictment at the Crown Court. That means it's an indictable offence, but not indictable only. On indictment, it carries a maximum of 10 years in prison. Although if it's on the charge sheet with another offence, which is indictable only, then all of the counts will go straight to the Crown Court. So this is not the case where one of them will stay at the Magistrates Court and the other one goes to the Crown Court, because they are all effectively on the same sheet, the same charge sheet. If one is indictable only, they will all go to the Crown Court. And such is the case, as you might have guessed, for the second charge. Because it was more serious, it is an indictable only offence. It carries a maximum of life imprisonment, which is taken to be 14 years. And because that is going to the Crown Court, the first charge is also going to the Crown Court. So because they are going to the Crown Court to be tried, the plea is not entered formally at the Magistrates Court. However, there is an indication given at the Magistrates Court, and I understand this, of course, to be not guilty in Kevin Spacey's case. Now, for the law students, particularly those in the United Kingdom and those internationally with an interest in this, there's been a lot of criminal litigation around the notion of formally entering a plea or indicating your plea at the Magistrates Court when the case is going to go to the Crown Court. It is literally a checkbox on the form presented at the Magistrates Court, likely to plead guilty or not guilty, although that is not a formal plea at this stage. So only with an indictable only, or with a case that has been sent to the Crown Court, it will only be an indication at the Magistrates Court and not a formal plea. So in Kevin Spacey's case, it will be a formal plea when he goes to the Crown Court, when the judge will ask him to stand and the charges will be put to him, and he will then formally enter, I expect, a not guilty plea. Then there's the issue of what we call bail, which means you are released from the court's control whilst such a defendant awaits trial. Now, there are usually some conditions attached to this, but quite unusually, there are no conditions attached to this whatsoever. So Kevin Spacey has been released on unconditional bail. Now, ordinarily, there are certain big grounds that a prosecutor would object to bail. One being that the defendant might interfere with witnesses. So very often, one of the conditions of bail would be not to interfere with witnesses, if the court believes that that is a fair condition and it overcomes any concern of the prosecution that they would do so. Other conditions of bail might be not to go to a certain area, of course, as I said, not to interfere with witnesses, and sometimes a curfew that they have to stay at home or stay within the area and all these kind of things. But following Kevin Spacey's statement in which he said that he will voluntarily appear in the UK as soon as it can be arranged to defend himself against the charges, and he said he's confident that he will prove his innocence, the judge in the case was obviously impressed by that and has granted him unconditional bail. Reports have said that Kevin Spacey appeared calm as he entered courts last Friday, and the judge rejected the claims that Kevin Spacey was a flight risk and, of course, as I said, granted him unconditional bail. The judge said, "You cooperated with the authorities in New York and you voluntarily appeared to these proceedings. I have not been persuaded there's a real risk that you will abscond, bearing in mind all I have heard about you." It should also be said that Kevin Spacey has repeatedly challenged any Me Too accusations against him and responded to those attacks against his character with dignity and even humour, as the papers reported. So what's going to happen next in this trial? Well, the next hearing is what we call a plea and trial preparation hearing, or PTPH for short, and that is set to be on the 14th of July, where I expect Kevin Spacey to enter a not guilty plea, given what he said thus far. So I hope that was a useful explainer, both to anyone in the United Kingdom, particularly the law students that watch, and those international viewers who are wondering what's going on and how it works in the UK. So that was just a brief overview, and of course I will follow up and do more explainer videos as things progress. In the meantime, I'd really appreciate it if you smash the like button. You'll give them permission to damage that button by smashing, and as always, thank you for watching.